Welcome back to our college football talk show, Dime Coverage Week 15. I'm Ryan Stalder.
And I'm Blake Giusti. Let's get into our first segment, Down, Out, and Up.
As far as teams we have moving down into the playoffs, not necessarily out, but down, we have Ohio State and Florida State.
Yes, we have Ohio State moving down, not because of a loss or anything, but because they lost basically their whole offense and their quarterback.
Yeah, JT Barrett's been stellar all year. Heisman candidate, probably would have got a trip to New York. I'm not sure how that works out. He might still, but he was definitely phenomenal in replacing Braxton Miller, and now we can see how their third string can do. But I heard he's not too bad. He was the second string at the beginning of the season when Braxton initially went out, and they competed, and Barrett won it. Also, we have FSU moving down.
Once again, this one's another surprising one for me with the committee there. They have FSU moving down after another win. Of course, it was another tight one to an unranked team, but it's the only Power 5 team that's remained undefeated, and they're still moving down.
I don't quite get it, but as far as moving out of the playoffs, we have Mississippi State, who just suffered their loss in the Egg Bowl to Ole Miss, and up.
We have Baylor and TCU.
Both Big 12 teams. It'll be interesting. We're going to get into it in a minute about the playoff. It'd be interesting to see two Big 12 teams actually get into the playoff.
That would be. But first, I'd like to talk about what the committee's doing here with moving TCU up and FSU moving down. What are your thoughts on that?
Frankly, I don't understand it because, one, there's a thing to say about being undefeated a whole year. Like, the committee can disregard being a back-to-back national championship contender if they want, but it's a lot harder when every team's giving you their best shot. Like, FSU's got countless amount of trick plays against them this year, just stuff like that. It's hard to really tend with every team's best shot as best you can, and they have all year, so I think you have to applaud them for that. But the committee clearly doesn't. Also, one thing we have a problem with is the head-to-head. Why don't you talk about that?
Yeah, I have Baylor better. I have Baylor above TCU because they beat them head-to-head. And, it's just the committee's not taking any of that into consideration.
That's all that should really matter, in my opinion. If you beat a team head-to-head, you're better than them. It wasn't a fluke. TCU didn't play bad. TCU played amazing, and Baylor beat them 61-58. It's a hell of a game, and it's a hell of a victory for Baylor, and they don't get any credit for it. So if they win against Kansas State this week, they should have a different story, but we'll talk about that in a minute.
Like you said, we're going to get a little bit into our playoff pictures here. I have Bama at number 1, as pretty much everybody in the nation does. I have Oregon is going to be the number 2 seed after they beat Arizona. FSU, I have losing this week, so next week I'm going to have them out, of course, after the loss. And I have Baylor jumping TCU if and when they can beat Kansas State this week, and I have TCU at the 4 spot. What do you have?
Well, I have Bama also number 1 because I think it's kind of embarrassing for the SEC to have a team like Missouri represent them 2 years in a row. Missouri doesn't really have anything going for them. They also lost out of conference to Indiana. Just throwing that out there.
Indiana's a football team?
Yeah, Indiana. It's not the Hoosiers basketball either. Hoosiers football team won. Yeah, it was interesting. Next, we have I have FSU. FSU, I think, beats Georgia Tech. They've played well against the run. They also scheduled Citadel at the beginning of the year because Georgia Tech was on their schedule, so they wanted to see that triple option. Things got mixed up. Georgia Tech ended up being taken off their schedule, but now it worked out for them scheduling Citadel in the beginning of the season.
They didn't really play well against Citadel, but we'll get into that at a different time.
I didn't play horribly. They didn't allow their first team defense didn't allow a point. But anyways, third I have TCU. Third I have Baylor because I think TCU is going to be 4th just because Baylor beating Kansas State. They'll finally have legitimately even resumes other than a Minnesota win, but I don't find that impressive.
And the head-to-head.
But Baylor did beat TCU head-to-head, so I have Baylor 3rd and TCU 4th, which if you'd have told me at the beginning of the year that 2 Big 12 teams were getting into the playoff and neither one of them were named Oklahoma,
I would have smacked you.
Yeah, that would be pretty ridiculous considering everybody had Oklahoma in their playoff pictures at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, what do you want to get into now? You want to do a little pick'em?
Yeah, let's get into the pick'em segment.
All right, first up we have Arizona versus Oregon. What are your thoughts on that one?
You guys might be a little bit surprised with me here, but I have Arizona beating Oregon for the 3rd time in a row, which some people go, how can Arizona beat Oregon 3 times? Are they a much better team? Arizona just matches up very well against Oregon. If you watched last year and you watch this year, Arizona just controls the game. They don't try to outscore them. They don't try to compete scoring. They don't try to completely stop Mariota. They contain Mariota, and they put points on the board, and I think that can work again. The spreads was 20 the first time, and Zona beat Oregon was favored the first time by 20 at home, and Zona beat them. This time it's at a neutral site. I mean, Zona has a pretty decent fan base, and they should be able to support, and I think they can get the job done. How about you?
Marcus Mariota. That's all I have to say.
What happened the first time they played them?
Don't worry about that. It's a new day, my friend.
Okay, so just checking.
Next, we have Alabama, Missouri. What do you have there in the SEC championship?
I mean, like I said earlier, Missouri's just not a great team. I don't really see them competing. They might keep it close early just because they're hyped, and Alabama's kind of, it's like a whatever game for Alabama. Even though it's a championship game, it's probably not even a top 5 team they've played this year. Bama's favored by 14.5, so I think, I don't know, I'm not sure if they'll cover, but it definitely won't be a competitive game come the fourth quarter. What about you?
Yeah, I agree. Alabama is one of the best players in the country, and Amari Cooper, and I think ultimately Missouri isn't. They're not even the best team in the SEC. I mean, they have the best record, whatever, but I don't know.
Kansas State, Baylor. What do you got there?
Kansas State, Baylor. Let's see. I have Baylor. Baylor, Bryce Petty. I have them getting into the playoff, but I've said it all year. I like this Kansas State team, but ultimately I think Baylor's going to earn their college football playoff position by beating Kansas State.
Yeah, Kansas State plays great defense, but Baylor just can score on anybody, and just like when you don't expect them to do well, they just score 30 points in the fourth quarter, and then you're like, oh, they did blow that team out. So you'll see. I think Baylor definitely gets the job done.
Yeah,
I think they do cover the 7.5 point spread.
Yeah, and what I'd like to add to that is the Kansas State defense they've been good, but they've been primarily a run-stopping team, and Baylor's going to throw the ball all over the yard on them.
Yeah.
Next, we have FSU versus Georgia Tech.
All right, this is the game I'd really like to get into because I've heard a lot of stuff about Georgia Tech, like FSU can't stop them. They're going to run the clock down the whole time. I'd just like to point out Georgia Tech lost their number 1 receiver. So and he has more than 50% of their receiving yards. So that's not like, for example, Rashad Green, FSU's awesome receiver. Him and Jameis have a great connection. He doesn't have 50% of FSU's receiving yards. So we have a more spread out team, but just to compare, they're losing their best receiver. So that's a big hit to the passing game. And I think when you put 8, 9 in the box, maybe if you can go one-on-ones with our 2 corners who are supposed to be drafted, maybe this year if they go or next year. And I just think Ronald Darby and P.J. Williams can lock up the guys outside. And if our linebackers play the way they can, they're all talented enough. If they play fundamentally sound and make their reads and their decisions correctly, I don't see it being competitive. I see it probably I have it predicted as 35-17.
Yeah?
Yeah, and I think FSU's offense is just too good for this Georgia Tech defense. How about you?
I actually wrote an article on why Georgia Tech was going to upset FSU this week, and it touched upon some of the things you said. Obviously, time of possession is a big thing for Georgia Tech. You mentioned 50% of their receiving yards that come from that one receiver. I didn't look at the stats on their receiving yards, but they're a very dominant running team. They're not passing the ball much. Maybe I don't know the real stats, but I'm sure it's not much more than 10, 15 times a game they're throwing the ball. And like you said, stuff in the box against that triple option. It's a different type of running attack than how the running attacks that you guys have stopped in the past. Like with Florida, it was one-dimensional. You have to worry about the running back, maybe a Trayon Harris, QB keeper. But this one, it's different. You can't just play crush the carrier and just see the ball and hit him. There are 3 guys who could have the ball on just about every play, and the defense doesn't even know until after they're already tackling the guy. And you mentioned the Citadel with their triple option. Even the Citadel, the FCS team, was able to control time of possession. If I'm not mistaken, they had the ball for 36 minutes as compared to FSU's 24 minutes. I think that Georgia Tech will be able to do the same thing, control the clock, and bring it down to the wire. And we saw how FSU has turned the ball over, not played well in the first half. Georgia Tech can get ahead by halftime, and they're just trying to milk the clock the second half. It could cause troubles. It could cause problems.
I think milking the clock, as far as milking the clock in the second half with that run attack, though, FSU makes great halftime adjustments, and as we saw against Miami, they were down 16 at the half. Duke Johnson, one of the best running backs in the country, we shut him down in the second half, and we locked the passing game down, and they only scored 3 points in the second half. So I think it's a little unfair to say that they would, if they're winning at half, they would control the rest of the game. Also, I have a question. What do you think about University of North Carolina's defense?
I would say they're bad,
How about Duke's defense?
average.
Both teams beat Georgia Tech. Next team.
Wisconsin versus Ohio State.
All right, Wisconsin, Ohio State. I have Wisconsin. They are favored in this game. I just think it's too big of a stage to put Ohio State's third-string quarterback into. I think that's a little.
I agree.
I mean, it's just it's a horrible situation for Meyer and his team to have to go through. I love Wisconsin. I love Melvin Gordon. I think he still has an outside shot at Heisman. It's definitely a two-horse race, and he's definitely number 2. So if he puts up 300 yards in this game, I mean, he still has a shot. So I think he has a lot to play for. It's his last game.
Especially with that Oregon upset you picked. If Mariota goes down, I think Melvin Gordon has a big game.
If Mariota goes down, Melvin Gordon has a big game. I think he has a lot to play for this week.
Yeah, I agree. Melvin Gordon, definitely with Gurley out, probably the best running back in the nation. Missouri, Ohio State's defense. Joey Bosa's played great the whole year on that defensive line, but
D-line, Big Ten D lineman of the year.
Yeah, exactly. But I have Wisconsin winning that one.
For our next segment, we're going to talk about a possible Braxton Miller transfer.
Yeah, we want to see, obviously, with JT Barrett playing so well. If I'm not mistaken, he injured his ankle, so that shouldn't affect him next year. So you have that battle going on. We'll see if Braxton Miller wants to get out of there, go to a different school.
Also, it'll be interesting to see if their third string plays well this week.
That'd be fun.
Because if he played well and he put up some serious numbers and showed he has some capabilities, then it would be not only a 2-horse race that Braxton has to go back into, but a 3-horse race. And I've heard he has interest in transferring. So we're going to discuss that real quick. I've heard his top 3 schools, or not maybe his, because I don't think he's released it yet, but top 3 schools that people think he wants to go to are Florida State, Oregon, as well as Alabama. We're going to discuss those real quick. What do you think about Alabama, first of all?
Alabama, obviously great pro-style offense, which is something he was looking for a little bit.
Definitely said he was looking for pro-style offenses, and because he doesn't like the spread and how much Urban Meyer runs him right now. He wants to stay in the pocket and be a pocket passer, show his NFL capabilities.
Which might all be for mood anyways, but we'll see anyways. Obviously, Alabama has a history of their quarterbacks being deemed game managers and not really being able to play at the next level.
Also, Blake Sims is a fifth-year senior this year, so that would open up a spot for him. But they do have Jacob Coker, who transferred from FSU, and apparently he's much more talented than Blake Sims, but he's just not game ready yet. But if a whole year under Saban and their coaching, I think next year he will be ready to go.
I agree. I think Coker will be the starter at Alabama next year. I think we can cross that one off the list of possible Braxton Miller destinations.
Next, we have FSU and Oregon. I'm just going to throw this out here right now. You guys at home might be going, well, Jameis is a sophomore, Mariota's a junior, I believe. So what is they're both gone. They're both the first 2 draft picks of quarterbacks. As far as quarterbacks go, they're 1 and 2.
Yeah, definitely. The Oregon runs that spread. He said he wanted to get away from that a little bit, but
Mariota definitely runs the ball quite a lot. He doesn't get hit that much because he's very good, but he does run the ball a lot.
Yeah, FSU. If Braxton were to leave, I think FSU would be probably the best destination for him with all the sick recruiting that FSU's brought in at the wide receiver position. He has people to throw to. He has a
NFL offensive line.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say, and I think he could be a good fit there.
I'm going to give you the FSU quarterback background right now. Right now we have, as FSU has their quarterback, Jameis, is leaving. They have their backup, who is Sean McGuire, who you guys saw play against Clemson. He's not very good.
To say the least.
They have 3 true freshman quarterbacks coming in next year, in DeAndre Francois and Kai Loxley, and another quarterback from Jacksonville he's small and not very good.
Kid.
He's good, but he's not doesn't have that much potential.
Right.
And we also have a quarterback who's a junior now by the name of Malik Henry from California, who's the number 1 quarterback. So he'll be here possibly the year after Braxton. So I don't think any true freshman would compete with Braxton Miller, nor would Sean McGuire. Do you agree?
I don't see many guys, competing with Braxton Miller.
So me and Blake see Braxton, if he decides to transfer, and unless it's a crazy transfer and he goes somewhere that nobody would ever expect, we think his best option is Florida State.
Yeah, but saying that, I do think that he is probably going to end up staying at Ohio State. I've heard a lot about maybe a 2 quarterback system there. I don't think Braxton Miller has what it takes to play in the NFL. Two rotator cuff injuries, throwing the ball. His accuracy has been decent. He's just a freak athlete at the
I heard
college
he
level.
is one of the best athletes in the country.
I've heard that too. Yes, definitely one of the best athletes. Just throws the ball decently, but he's really just more athletic than everybody on the field at the college level, and that's why he does so well.
Next segment, we're just going to talk about a little bit about the coaching situation right now. Personally, me and Blake know a lot about Muschamp and what he's going through, so go ahead, Blake.
Obviously, just let go from Florida. A couple job opportunities opened up. I know I believe Auburn has already offered him a job there. Texas A&M just fired their DC. So if Muschamp wants to stay in the SEC, then those would probably be the top two destinations.
Blake, I have heard talk. I'm not sure if this is true, but I have heard that since the Gators are paying Muschamp still, I believe it's $2 million a year.
Yes.
Still for the next 3 years. I do not think technically he's allowed to be a DC in the SEC anymore. I heard that might be a rumor on his contract. I don't think they've released it yet, but that's a possibility. Where do you think you could go outside the SEC?
Yeah, I don't know about the contract or anything, but FSU would, again, this FSU team has a lot going on right now, especially trying to get into the playoff and everything, but FSU seems like a great fit. I wrote an article on that one too. Just the numbers between last year and this year, their defense, the talent is still there. From last year, they lost a couple guys. Joyner,
Timmy Jernigan,
and there's one more. The
Terrence
safety,
Brooks.
Terrence Brooks.
Yeah.
Lost those three guys, but this year they have other guys stepping up. Ramsey, they have
Eddie Goldman is a first-round pick supposedly coming up this year at DT, filling in for Jernigan.
Yeah, so basically what I'm getting at is that the talent is still there on the FSU defense, and their production is just not even come close to what it's done last year. And the main difference is that they had a defensive coordinator last year in Pruitt.
Jeremy Pruitt.
Yeah, Jeremy Pruitt, who left for Georgia after being there for 1 year. I think that this FSU defense needs a good DC, and Muschamp is one of the best in the businesses.
Also, Muschamp and Jimbo Fisher coached together at LSU. When LSU won its national championship under Saban in 2003, Jimbo was the OC, Muschamp was the DC, and Saban was the head coach. So if you want some three good coaches right there, I mean, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, it would have been tough for them not to win the championship. But
Jimbo still is the OC at FSU, so maybe they could get Muschamp back on the defensive side, and I mean, that would be crazy for them. Also,
moreover, they're friends.
Yeah, they're friends. They're good friends. Also, after Jimbo's talk, his post-game talk, they asked him, "Did you say anything, Muschamp? What happened after the game?" "Oh, I just told him good game, and his guys fought hard, and that I'd call him soon." So, I mean, you can speculate on that one if you want. That sounds like a possible job offer to me.
Sounds like fun. I like it.
It is a tricky situation, though, considering FSU has a current DC who's competing for a championship right now, and Charles Kelly, their linebacker coach from last year, got called up at the DC spot. I think it's unfair to fire him maybe after 1 year, but at the same token, I don't think it's fair to not fair, but I don't think it would be smart to let a guy like Muschamp walk away. So it should be interesting how that saga plays out between those two.
Yeah, I mean, I remember one stat that popped out at me from the article I wrote was the FSU defense 2 times last year. 2 times they allowed more than 14 points, not including the national championship. And up to this point, they've only allowed less than 14 points 2 times.
It's crazy.
And
Huge
one was
turnout.
against the Citadel. So,
Yep.
yeah. Got anything else?
Well, just that Muschamp wants to walk back into a place that he can recruit like Florida, and FSU already has the #1 safety from next year coming in, the #4 cornerback coming in per ESPN. So, I mean, he just wants to walk into a place, I feel, that has that talent. I don't think Auburn or Texas A&M could get that right away.
I agree.
And I think it's definitely a short-term job. If he went to FSU, I don't think he wants to be a long-term ACC DC, but I think he could get a launching pad from there, have a heck of a defense in the next few years, and go to either a head coaching job again or an SEC DC maybe a better one like Alabama or, I mean, I don't know if Kirby Smart will still be there, but obviously he's a good quarterback or DC, but Georgia, maybe a top defense in the SEC would be good for him. All right, guys, that wraps us up for Dime Coverage Week 15. I'm Ryan Stalder.
And I'm Blake Juicy. We'll see you guys next time.
See you guys next time.
Is there an echo in here?